Simon, beam me in. It's time to start the show. Hey movie junkies, welcome back to Twin Flicks, where we always here celebrating the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media. Ooh. Not again. He did this in the last video too. Hang on guys, 1 second here. Simon, you forgot the movies. Beam in the movies. He did this last time too. Someone's getting fired. Hey movie junkies, I'm Paul and welcome back to another episode of Twin Flicks, where we always here celebrating the magic of movies and most importantly, physical media with you. Now in my last Star Trek video, I compared the 4Ks to Star Trek Generations and First Contact to its previous Blu-ray. And today I'm going to be reviewing Insurrection and Nemesis. Now if you didn't check out my Generations and First Contact comparison review, the link will be at the end of this video. Now before we begin the review, I have to point something out with Insurrection. Since the theatrical run, many have strongly believed the visual effects were unfinished during the collector sequence at the end of the film, being the solid blue background, believing it to be a blue screen that was supposed to have special effects on it. And this has been a long-running debate. Well, this belief has finally been debunked by Michael Kuda, who was the film's set supervisor and gave the definitive answer in his tweet. Here it is. The blue screens were intended to be blue. Lighting a blue screen for visual effects, especially in that era, was an extremely exacting process necessary to achieve an even brightness across the entire screen surface. And here's the part where he clarifies it. This was not done for the collector's backgrounds. And he even goes on to say, also the collector's set was added to the script rather late in the pre-production process. Writer Michael Piller asked me for suggestions for a setting where they could add a dramatic fight. I suggested the scaffolding behind the big blue sky backdrop on the Paramount backlot, knowing that the film's budget was already spoken for, so any new addition would need to be very economical. Nevertheless, Piller and production designer Herman Zimmerman were able to convince the studio to fund the enormous new set. So there it is. The blue background was in fact intentional, and that scene was not released unfinished. Again, it was always intended to have a blue background. It was not just a blue screen. Now, just as with Generations and First Contact, Star Trek Insurrection and Nemesis comes at us with a new 4K restoration from the original 35mm negative, forming a new native 4K DI with the added benefits of HDR10 and Dolby Vision grading. Alright guys, so let's get into it. Let's compare the 4K presentations of Insurrection and Nemesis against its 2009 Blu-rays and see all the improvements. Let's get to it. Now, just as with Generations and First Contact, the results for Insurrection is a huge significant upgrade over the 2009 Blu-ray release, which was, again, just as the others, littered with digital processing, excessive grain management, crushed blacks. I mean, you name it, it had it. And Insurrection has finally been completely cleaned up, looking how it should, with a brighter and crisper image. Now, since the majority of the film takes place down on the Baku planet that looks honestly a little too much like San Gabriel Canyon in California, that means there are more colors to the palette than the previous two films. And the color reproduction is gorgeous and also corrected. The greens of trees, plants, foliage, brush are lusher and fuller. Blues are deeper and more natural, especially the blue skyline and the lake, and the earthy tones of the canyon and forest, with browns, tans, and grays, are all on full display and looking more robust and lifelike. The saturation gives more nuance and accuracy to the image that just demolishes the Blu-ray. Other primary colors, such as reds and yellows, actually look red and yellow now that are bolder and more natural. The entire color palette just really pops. The landscape, cast under the bright sun exposure, really comes to life with color density and accuracy than I've ever seen it since its theatrical run. The crew's uniform colors are accurately displayed with reds, blues, greens that perfectly contrast against the gray-black uniforms. The explosions really ignite the screen and delivers a lot more punch and vibrancy without any manipulative sharpness. While on the Blu-ray, the explosions were blown out and didn't look very natural. Now the explosions look natural and how they should. Skin tones are also warmer and more natural looking, while the Blu-ray, either the skin tones look too pale or too hot. It just went back and forth on that depending on the scene. The black levels are exceptional with those deep inky blacks that we love and rich velvety shadows that really draws out more discernible details and colors, even in the darkest corners of the frame. And I found zero crushing in the image. The Blu-ray had so much crushing that engulfed much of the details and also some grayish blacks where the image quality just really suffered from on the Blu-ray. The 4K restores the blacks how they are supposed to look. The detail levels are a huge reference point here, especially when compared to the waxy, flat-looking details and textures of the Blu-ray. On the planet's surface, the canyon terrain has greater refinement in texturing, showing off all the imperfections and cracks and lines and rocks, the canyon rocks, to gravel. And the mountain lake setting just looks absolutely gorgeous here. On the Enterprise, all the buttons and lights on the bridge is clearly visible and lights up, very active. And facial close-ups are on point. You can make out pores, makeup, beads of sweat. I mean, it just looks outstanding. Depth is a major plus here, giving very nice three-dimensionality to the image and also more spaciousness, giving more distance and density to the planet's surface, and also with the enemy ship that looks incredible against the blackness of space and when it goes up against the Enterprise. The grain structure is thankfully fully intact here, giving a nice filmic appearance, unlike the Blu-ray that was scrubbed to death with grain management. Alright, now let's dig into the audio presentation, and really, just as with Generations and First Contact, Insurrection is no different. It has a new 7.1 lossless Dolby True HD track, and really, there isn't much more to talk about that I haven't already said in Generations and First Contact. It sounds about the same. If you want to know more detail on that, check out those reviews. But the 7.1 audio track has a tremendous amount of activity that's very immersive and some fantastic object placement in the surround speakers. Dialogue is rendered crystal clear and crisp. Alright, so my score for Paramount Pictures 4K UHD presentation of Star Trek Insurrection, I'm giving the video presentation a 4.5 out of a 5 and the audio a 5 out of a 5. This is definitely a huge upgrade from the Blu-ray. Alright, now I'm curious to hear your opinion here. Head over to the comment section and let me know, between the two formats here, the Blu-ray and the new 4K UHD, which do you like better? Head over to the comment section and let me know. Alright, now let's move into Star Trek Nemesis. Now, the difference here with Nemesis is it had a very different look than the previous three films. This time around, the film was shot by cinematographer Jeffrey Kimball, who was also Tony Scott's cinematographer on movies like Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop 2, True Romance. It was also directed by Stuart Bird, who is a prolific editor on some of our favorite action films from the 80s and 90s. And he directed a few himself, such as Executive Decision. So Nemesis definitely has a much more aggressive look than the previous three films, and it has a more cinematic appearance to it. And also the visual effects were completed by James Cameron's Digital Domain, rather than ILM, who did all the previous TV shows and films, and they lean more towards CG models rather than practical models. So I was really curious how well the now 21-year-old CG effects hold up today, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. But first I wanted to talk a little bit about the color reproduction, especially with that bleached, harsh look down on Chloris 3. It's handled much, much better here. No longer does it have that really blown out look as the 2009 Blu-ray had. It's still a pretty harsh environment, but it looks much more cleaner and organic and accurate now. Primary colors are bold and healthy, that's richly vibrant, giving far more nuance than the Blu-ray could ever offer. The film, like First Contact, is also a very dark looking movie. And the Blu-ray greatly suffered in this department with an abundance of crushing, engulfing a lot of details and colors. Even the stars in space are engulfed. I'm very happy to report we have none of this here. The blacks are very deep and inky, and shadows are rich that penetrate into the screen. The first shot of Shizen is striking and also very dark, but now we can make out a little bit better with his face being hidden within the shadows until he finally reveals himself to Picard and the crew. It's really an excellent reference point, especially when comparing it to the Blu-ray. There's also some very nice separation and depth to the image that opens it up and makes it look more spacious, showing off the epic scale to the film. That's something I've never seen before in home media. It looks just how I remember it looking in a theater. There's also very impressive details and facial features, costumes. The makeup and creature effects are very detailed and textured. The CGI work also holds up. It looks stronger, such as the CG ship models. The final battle between the two ships is incredibly impressive, especially when the Enterprise rams into Shizen's ship. You can now make out even the tiniest details of shards of metal and glass that spread through space that just litters the image and really puts the Blu-ray to shame. It really shows the power of what a 4K restoration, a good 4K restoration, 4K Ultra HD can bring to the image. It's just an incredible scene. Now, I will say, though, the visual effects shots are a little on the softer side, but really that's to be expected because it's inherited, and it's not a problem with the transfer. And just as with the previous 3 films, the grain is fully intact here with a very nice, light, natural grain structure, giving that rich filmic appearance. Now, say what you will about the film, some hate it, some love it, but either way, finally we have Nemesis back to how it should look. It's a beautiful looking film that I haven't seen since the theater. The HDR Dolby Vision grading really opens up the color gamut, only enhancing what's already there. Alright, let's get into the audio presentation. Again, we have a new 7.1 lossless Dolby HD track. There isn't much more to talk about, as it sounds just as fantastic as Generations and First Contact and Insurrection, with a tremendous amount of activity that's immersive, some great object placement, a lot of activity in the surrounds, especially during the ramming scene. Dialogue is rendered crystal clear and crisp, and music nor sound effects ever drown out any part of the dialogue. Alright, so my overall score for Paramount Pictures 4K UHD presentation of Star Trek Nemesis, I'm giving it, as I did at First Contact, a resounding 5 out of 5 for audio and video. This is just a fantastic looking 4K UHD. Ditch that old Blu-ray and pick this up. Well, now I'm really curious about your opinion here between the two formats. When you look at the two formats here side by side, between the Blu-ray and the 4K UHD, which do you think looks better? Head over to the comments section and let me know. Alright guys, well I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes here, comparing the differences here between Insurrection and Nemesis 4K UHD versus the Blu-ray. As always, keep physical media alive, and I'll see you next time. Simon, beam me out of here.